I was a little worried.
Well, they haven't played, I think, in what, 18 days?
Yeah.
Might say that, I don't know, but, you know, playing in front of 70,000 people might be a little nervous too.
Turned out okay. Are we waiting for anybody?
Nope, we are all here.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Let's call the meeting to order. We have a couple things on the agenda. Thank you, gentlemen, for being with us again. I think you're first on the agenda, right? Yes. 303 Lafayette. And there were some additional materials that you had submitted, and we had asked for, and we had submitted. Okay. Go right ahead.
Okay. Do you want to talk about what this is, or do you want me to present it first?
Either way is fine.
I'll give a brief overview and then turn it. Yeah, why don't you do a brief overview?
Again, good afternoon, Josiah Lamp, I'm the housing director of Chicago Opportunities, and Chicago Opportunity is the developer of a single women's shelter here in Jamestown, which will be located at 303 Lafayette Street. And we are in that meet the need for additional shelter space for single women, which we don't have a shelter for in our county at all at this time. So the development is being coordinated with the Design Architects, and here is from that firm, and we present on the site plan.
Okay. Well, what we have here is a 3-story brick building that's existing. It is substandard. I believe it's been condemned now as far as current occupants go. Right now, the first floor is vacant. It's an old vacant laundromat in the front, and in the back, it's just storage. The current owner has multiple rental places, and he uses that to store his paint and all this other stuff. So that's what it's being used for right now. So as far as the lay of the land goes, this is higher here, and then it comes down. Now this and this are connected buildings. In fact, the owner, I believe, owns both of them now, but this is being subdivided off. Now, we have kind of a unique situation. The property line is here, the building is here. That's about 8 inches off the property line. Down through the middle of it here, between the two, there's an alleyway that's, I don't know, probably 6 feet wide. And we call it, not an alleyway, it's an enclosed. We call it a utility alley. So that's where the sanitary sewer is. We don't have gas, but it's gas service for this building and electric service for this building. So because we're only 8 inches off of there, we can't have windows here. There are existing windows there right now, and that's the apartments, but, so it's pre-existing non-conforming, essentially. This is higher here, this is a parking lot, and there's an entrance right here. So, that being said, well, what we do have is about 4 feet here, 3.8 feet, so it's like not quite 4 feet here, which allows us to put windows here, which we have to have because these are apartments upstairs. And we're allowed by state code to have 15% of this windows. I think we have like 13.5%, so we're under that now. So, to give you a better picture of what this looks like, this is some photographs from different. So this is our, actually, there's actually a parking lot that's lower. I took this picture here. This right now is a blank wall. And it's a blank wall, and inside there's a stairway, but this is where we're putting the units on this side here. So these are windows there for the apartments. You can see this from 3rd Street. You're looking at the existing building here. That's the neighboring building. This is right now has has windows along here. But that's from that side, and then from the front off Lafayette, this is the existing. And we're changing sort of the window wall, the situation that's in there. There's an entrance here, there's a stair tower here, and then the apartment floors are here. That particular window, that was one of the discussions we had, is in the middle of the landing of a stair tower. So what we're doing is we're gonna leave the opening, put a nice new window to match all the other windows, probably black plywood behind it, so it's kind of a blind window, but it balances the facade a lot better, because if this were missing, it would be quite odd. There's an existing canopy frame here, and we want to reuse that. Probably, certainly, we're going to be putting new fabric on it. It's not that bad a shape, but we're doing everything new, so that would be, we're going to reuse the existing frame, which is in very good condition. Generally speaking, the building is good. It's very substandard when you look at the apartments. It's, there's nothing about it beats code. It will when we're done. But the brickwork itself is in very good shape. It's a layer of brick, it's a layer of building tile. You don't see that in modern buildings much, except in Europe. But that's the structure. It gives us, between this building and that building, it actually gives us about a 3-hour wall in there. So we actually need a 2-hour wall. So what's going on inside is this. And again, right now, the first floor, this part of it here, or this part of it here, is an abandoned laundromat, and then it's storage in the back. Structurally, it's very, very overbuilt. The floors were used as, I was told, an automobile warehouse. So, we've got 2x12s there that are 14 feet long that you could land a tank on that thing because they stored engine parts, that sort of thing. So we didn't put the labels on here, but I'll kind of go through it. This area here is a community space. It's a common shared area for the tenants. There's a little computer station here. There's a laundry here. There's a public bathroom. When you first come inside, because this is a secured entrance, we have, right here, it's hard to see, but there's a window there. There are also cameras. That's a security office, monitor who's coming and going. Now, with this kind of project, you do one of three things as far as food goes, because food's part of the program. You can either have a kitchen in there and prepare meals, which is done rarely, pretty heavy regulations with the health department. Other ones might use a warming kitchen where people come and they eat. But again, you have health department involved, and it's a lot of emphasis on that with our budget. So what we do is we're going to have food available that will be picked up right here, and there's some refrigerator, a big freezer, and shelving and all that. So they will bring food here, and there'll be a window, and then the people that live there actually pick up food, and then they cook it upstairs. So they have their own apartments. And up here, we'll get to that in a second. This is a conference room. That's an office. This whole array of little rooms here are storage rooms. There are 18 of them. This facility will hold 18 beds. I think 19 is the cutoff. When you do that, you have to double the staff. But there's staff there 24/7. So it's pretty well monitored. Plus, there won't be cameras in the apartments, but everything is cambered, including outside, the entrance. Again, this is conference room, office. This is kind of loading back in here. And we've got an electrical area here, but there's a stair tower here and a stair tower here, and they go up here. When you get up to the top of the stairs, there's a corridor that goes this distance here. And then behind it are little one-bedroom apartments. They're not studio, they're one bedroom. On this floor, this one here is an ADA accessible unit, fully compliant. These others, there's an elevator here that goes from the first floor to the second floor. And by code, we have to have adaptable units so that we can switch them over if we want to later or if the need arises. But what that means is that the bathrooms have to be actually accessible bathrooms on this floor. Makes the bedrooms a little smaller, but they do meet code, they meet the standards that a shelter requires, or most of them between 90 and 100 square feet on this floor, 80 is required. And we've actually got the whole thing worked out where beds will fit. We have a whole furniture plan, because they're little. I mean, these are little apartments. There's a little kitchen here, little 2-burner stove, little 2-foot wide refrigerator. But people that will be staying there are transitional, so they're not permanent apartments. So programmatically, they're supposed to be there for 30 days and no more. So therefore, they are transitional housing. Then you go to the second or the third floor. Those bathrooms can be smaller because they're not accessible. This shows the elevator here, but it's actually the space above the elevator. And so we've got a little storage up in there, a little mechanical stuff going on there. And so there's 6 apartments here, there's 6 apartments here. These are single person. These are designed to be able to hold 2 beds, and they're larger. Because the minimum size there for 2-person bedroom is 120 square feet. And these are all in excess of 120. In fact, I don't think any of them are smaller than 130. So they range about 130 square feet to about 145. And these are just basic apartments. Now here is where when we have egress, we have light and ventilation that has to be taken care of, and that's what these windows do. So the same is true up here, but again, you can see there's a closet, a little closet. Trying to make, I mean, when 2 people are in a bedroom, they don't know each other and they're sharing separate beds. You can have a little dorm style, but I've got a lot of housing, and there's a whole thing about territory that people like, even if they're there for 30 days. They want to know, this is my little spot. So we designed this so that the bed at one end, everybody has their own individual closet, and they share the kitchen. Now, it doesn't mean there will always be doubled up 2 in each one. It depends on the ebb and flow of the people that come there. And so that, basically common areas, storage, service, 6 apartments with adaptable bathrooms, 6 apartments without. So that's what's inside of this. Now, I'm going to point these windows out here. This is the 3rd floor, this is the 2nd floor. Right now, there's a whole bunch of windows here, but they're only 8 inches off the property line. And we are going to attempt to, by code, you can't put a window there, but we have a variance process with the state of New York. And as we get into it, we're going to pursue that, because it'd be nice to have a little natural light in those corridors. If we fail, it works, it's fine, but it'd be nice to have. It also looks a little better from 3rd Street, even though it is quite distant. Those windows would be here, but there's not near as many as what's there now. So again, this is the blind window, that's the front. This is the brand new windows. Because this is off a bank, there's 2 little awning type windows that are here that bring natural light into the community room space. Okay, so the last piece of this is the elevations. Now, it's going to be brick. This is brown, but it's going to be brick. It's going to be red brick. So what we have here is the awning. There's a big storefront in here. We'll close that up, but that is you can see that it slopes down. We're coming off, there's a parking lot next door. There's no parking required here because of where it is. So we double checked all that. But we'll still have this entrance coming off of here. You go in here and that's the community room space, and that's the blind window. These are all windows in apartments. There's a freight elevator here. We're going to keep a couple of walls as a screen to help hide the HVAC system, which is going to be back here, but pretty far back. So you always see them on top of buildings, and we're trying to kind of minimize that visual impact. These are our new windows. These are double windows. What we'll do is we'll harvest brick. These are odd-sized brick. They're a little oversized, so trying to match them with modern brick is impossible. But we are tearing down parts of this. We're opening this up, and we'll be able to use that brick that we harvest to do the infill and the openings. And we even have the working drawing so that a joint is here, it can, we designed it so that if a window has to move 2 inches this way, it can, without hitting a wall or anything. So we want it to look like they belong there and that they're a part of the whole deal. This is, there'll be sills here that are limestone sills. Right now it's a mix of limestone and brake metal and all kinds of different configurations there that they kind of just put together. But that's basically it. Loading area in the back. That's Hoyt Alley. This is on Lafayette Street here. So this one we weren't as concerned about the blind windows going away. Stair tower there too, because it literally is off the alleyway. But we're very concerned, how does it look from 3rd Street? How does it look from Lafayette? So that's, if you have questions.
Is there do you expect with tenants that they'll have vehicles?
Generally not, no.
Okay, I was thinking you probably be looking at it that way. Good.
We did, I mean, people, this is funny, it's like, well, people are homeless, so they don't have anything. Yes, they do, they've got lots of stuff. So we have, there's this isn't part of the program, this is HHAP, but there's HCR, used to be called Division of Housing and Community Renewal, and they have a minimum of a 25 square foot storage that they, so we use that requirement, although we're all of them on those little storage areas. So we've got a place to store stuff there. And there's also a house storage, so if there's a little bit of an overrun, somebody's got something that's keeping, we've got a place for them. But these generally are not, I mean, there's no parking required. Maybe people will have cars, but I don't think.
I didn't know how many there might be, but I've read several times where people are basically housing themselves in vehicles. And, you know, if they bring it along with, but still want to get inside, if you will, what are they gonna do with it?
I know the current property owner has an agreement, to share space with the, parking lot behind there. So that's something that could be pursued, but, generally speaking, people who are, homeless and using our other homeless resources in the county, they're not using the vehicle as a business. They're storing them somewhere else and then.
No, I understand. It was just that, that group that is
That's small.
on their way down and carrying cars still with them.
The elevator go just a second floor, is it?
Pardon?
The elevator?
Goes from the 1st floor to the 2nd floor.
Okay. Is there maintenance facilities on the 3rd floor, 2nd floor, upper floor?
There's a what, there's a space above it.
Maintenance facility, there's housekeeping, that kind of thing?
Oh, well, yeah. There is a janitor's closet. There is, shipping and receiving here, so there's areas for maintenance here, there's areas for maintenance here. These are all secured doors, so service people.
How do you maintain the 3rd floor?
Pardon?
How do you maintain the 3rd floors?
How do you
I'm assuming
maintain?
you got transient customers, you're gonna be cleaning those rooms quite often.
Well, just like any other places. I'll say this, because of the funding source, we're not allowed to have carpet, which is good, because carpet gets filthy and it wears. Everything is either, like nice tiles, LVT, they call them luxury vinyl tile, or they're, tile just like this. So it's really easy to clean.
I guess my point is, if you gotta mop those floors,
From time-
is there a maintenance area on the upper floor?
There is.
My water bucket up to the top.
Yeah, I think that's what we have on the upper floor. We have janitors, part of this room right here is a complete this is where the backflow preventer, where the water heaters are, it's mechanical, but there's a whole area here, so yeah, that's, but we had this problem, which is, this is a very small building, relatively speaking, and the apartments are very small. So there would be, I don't know how that would work, but there's staff there, 24 hours a day. So there would be, if the elevator went all the way to the top, it would not only increase the price, which is not an issue, but it would pop up above, this far above the roof. So we have the elevator only going to this floor. And it's an ADA compliant, it's the smallest one you can get, because you get a wheelchair in there, you can get a stretcher in there. But you're right, you're gonna have to bring it up one more floor from the elevator.
So that room above the elevator, that could be a Janica's cost?
Well, no, the room above the elevator, you have to have 4 feet above the elevator and you have a hoisting beam.
Okay.
That's how they put that in place. We are using that space, it just has a, an access door to it, but it's not really a place to, put a janitor's area. Like I said, we do have a janitor's area downstairs, that'll be complete, but but
There's one staircase on the third floor, or two?
two stairs
Two staircases on the third floor.
on the third floor, on all floors.
No,
Elevator, no, not all the way up to
so all the equipment, everything has to be hand carried up from the second floor.
That's correct.
And they can use the water that's in the apartments to do cleaning?
Yes, they can, That's a good point. But the actual mop and the mop bucket itself, will be stored down here, so any cleaning materials, that sort of thing. But again, the entire, it's either sheet vinyl, this doesn't work well, VCTs don't work well for bathrooms and for kitchens. So we have a little area where you first come in where you can put your boots or whatever, that's sheet vinyl, then, and the bathroom and the kitchen area is sheet vinyl, and the rest of it is the VCT, which is also nice because if they're damaged, we'll have extras and we can replace them. Whereas sheet vinyl, you have to take the whole thing out. Just as another note, this is currently not sprinklered, and it is required to be sprinklered, and it probably was then too, when it was converted. So the whole thing is gonna be completely sprinklered, proper fire separation. We're actually using a metal stud system for the corridor walls and between the units. We get better sound control that way. But the rest of it's wood. There'll be some modification to the structure, but, I mean, right now they've got hollow core doors, like the cheapest doors you can, on the market. Those are the front doors, small child can kick it in, We're having solid core doors. We also have, we're gonna do, like the kind of locks you have in hotels that are fob operated or card operated, so that everybody gets their own key and they can't get into another person's place without their key. Those are changed every time a resident, there's a whole system where they reprogram.
Will you use doors that get in the front door as well?
Yeah, you get in the front door, but we also have several of the doors down here are also monitored like that. So, for instance, we don't want people back in the service area, so this is an exit out here, so this is a means of egress here, but this door here is locked. And there's electrical equipment here, but not much, and then there's a lot of storage area for food or whatever. But that one is secured. There are several others that are secured offhand. This one, you'll have to get buzzed in, just to make sure that, somebody didn't come in and let somebody else in. There's a lot, security is a big issue. We have a variety of people that will be living there. Basically, they're all homeless, that's the whole point. But we also want to have control over who comes and goes. Right now, somebody could open that stairway door that's there and let everybody in, we're not going to have that situation.
I know you said single women, what about children?
No, single women, there are 3 categories, men, women with children, and single women. And they have different sets of rules. And Josiah could maybe,
Yeah, there is a need for that as well, but we can't do it in the same facility. So in this case, this is our largest need for most people who are homeless or single. So we're going to try to fix that.
Any plans in the future for a facility that would accommodate children?
I'm aware of some other people who are working on that, but not single.
The Salvation Army has an Agnes home, which
Okay.
currently accepts women and children.
We do have a couple single family homes where we can place families.
Is this males only, or females?
Females.
female only. I mean, the obvious, if you had a mixed free-for-all, the abuses, it's just like we're asking for abuse if you have, which is why they break it up into different kinds. You know, and that could be other women that might be, you know, but again, everything is not inside the apartments, but everything is cambered, so you can see what's going on. But the state, I think, these are state rules on how you do the shelters.
You mentioned 30 days, what's the process during that time to find permanent housing?
So that's what we already do as families or individuals, is we try to help them get back into rental housing. We need financial assistance to help with that and with the services, because often if they're in homelessness, they need for certain other services. So, first we try to get them in food, shelter, that, and then they have regular appointments with our staff, and then they can start looking for apartments. And try to find apartments.
Do you have access to those services in this building, or do they?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's one of the advantages, that we'll have staff there in the building, it'll be very convenient for them, it's within walking distance of social services. We have a partnership with Chautauqua Works, which is also within walking distance, so there's a lot of services that they will be able to access much more easily here than in the current situation.
And you mentioned food, how is the food supplies that they can cook?
So we'll have a supply of dried goods there in the building, basically to help with that first night stay, or a little longer if needed, but they will have access to the SNAP benefits through the departments, because the next day, they'll be required to social services, and then they'll have access to SNAP, and then they'll use that.
Will they have transportation to the facility to use that service?
They will have access to, they'll have cards.
Okay. And where's the closest car? Just right down the street.
And actually, I think, you know, it's gonna look better in the neighborhood, and it is a fully compliant, the design is fully compliant with state of New York building codes, and that's part of the information that was asked after I sent a complete drawing, 55 sheets of drawings of the entire thing. So if there's any question, you know, they were in those drawings. Plus, while they're not the official set, it gave Larry a chance to sort of review and start his code review.
Is part of the intake process there? Can they walk to that facility, or is it?
Yeah, they could, someone could just show up, you know, a lot of times we do get referrals, but someone could just show up anytime of the day, you know, some staff members are.
There's a definite need for this, and we've seen an increase in the homeless population. Do you have an idea what the homeless population in Jamestown is?
You know, I don't have the data for Jamestown, I was just looking at, you know, we counted in the county, 695 people who are literally homeless, meaning they're either on the street or in shelter, between January and August. Another about 100 who are, we're working with to prevent eviction. And then more people I don't know, who are in programs that they're formerly homeless and they're still in the programs. So, that's a significant amount, and I would say most of them, or at least the majority, are in Jamestown.
The other night, that meeting was, there were like 70 or so in the city.
Yeah, that estimate was low. I think even the mayor was talking about a certain area where there were 50 to 60 people living.
Could be.
Yeah, he's talking about the street, people living on the street,
Mhm.
which is a little difficult to count. So we're
Right.
working to try to get a better count of that, because we certainly have seen an increase, but sometimes it's hard to know if somebody's really homeless or they're just kind of in the area where all the other people are. So we're trying to get a good count of that right now.
Where are the single women who are homeless, generally saying?
In the motel.
When do you anticipate starting this work? When do you expect the renovation?
So 2023, we're working in the bid packet right now. We're gonna get contractors lined up, and we got some good prospects there.
Yeah, we did a pre-qualification, and we're still resolving some little issues. This has been reviewed not only by the funding source, but also the dormitory authority. They do a lot of that review of other, and then we're working with the DASME, the dormitory authority. So everything is being looked at very carefully, but we're weeks away from being going out to bid. So the working drawings, the construction documents are done. And they've been reviewed, and they had no comment on them except, send us the bid package stuff, so that's what we're working on right now. And we're probably about halfway through the bid package. But we're hoping to, put this out to bid literally in a matter of a couple of weeks.
So the funding sources are all secured at this point?
I'm sorry,
Funding is all secured at this point?
funding is secured.
Good.
Yep. What was it, March?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think March is when we received the notice that we were being funded. It's a very competitive world. I've done a lot of housing, and how many points you get for this, that's the big game that everybody plays. And I've done, senior projects, I've probably done 18 of them, larger ones. This is an interesting one for me too, because it's always interesting working with existing buildings. Those 18 I'm talking about are all new construction. Done a lot of rehab too, but we did secure the funding in March, which gave us the green light to start the working drawings, which is what we've been doing since then. And we're ready to go.
Any adverse environmental impacts that you've identified? Any negative environmental impacts that you identified?
Okay, we did not find any in the seeker, but we've also had a report done, because lead is important, asbestos containing materials, that's very important. So this whole thing has been studied, and samples have been taken. We have a little bit, I was surprised there's none on the roof. That was very surprising to me, because that's a place you see it a lot, because you get roof on top of a roof on top of, the roof itself is about, they gave us a little core when they did the sample, it's like 3/4 of an inch thick, layer after layer, no asbestos. We found a little bit of lead paint, but that's exclusively in materials that will be demolished and that will be gone. We found a little bit of asbestos, sealants, more than anything, just sealants, but they tested the drywall, that's a big one. Because drywall can kill you, because drywall even today has asbestos in it. It's just, it doesn't meet that threshold. I've worked on projects where the drywall, I did a project for Livingston County, the old nursing home they were converting to the government center. They spent $1 million taking the asbestos out of a very large facility, but they had to seal it up, everybody's got their space suits and the showers and the whole thing. We don't have any of that. And all of the asbestos that we have, that we found, is all in products that are being discarded as part of the demolition, so it's gonna be gone. Everything has to be properly, legally disposed of. But I couldn't believe it, we didn't have anything in the roof, because those old roofs are almost always, they got felts down in there that are asbestos. I was quite surprised. Also, this is all electric heat, it is now, it wasn't, it was, then it is, will be now, that's the big push now, is a big split kind of system that's, big enough for the whole facility. But because of that, there's no pipe wrap. That's another big one that you see a lot. And, I'm not certified to do that, but all I have to do is look at it, and I go, this is disgusting. Same with the 9-inch tiles. This was remodeled in, I'm gonna say it's 81, and extensively remodeled and converted to the apartments. And asbestos containing materials were prohibited, I think in 1977, and lead-based paints were prohibited in 1978. So all of the new stuff that was in here, even though it is substandard, was done after asbestos and lead were removed from our market. They tested them. We have a complete report on the whole thing. It's part of our documents.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from our technical advisor? Any other questions, comments? Is there a motion relative to secret to make a negative declaration?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Is there a motion should ask, is there a recommendation or any comments from the staff?
There is a recommendation to the commission to approve.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve then?
So move.
Motion by Jeff, is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All set.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Good luck.
The second item on the agenda is the local preservation ordinance.
Thank you. Put on my other hat. Now I'm a presenter. So I do have copies of the materials that I shared otherwise, if anyone needs or wants. Brett, I know you had said that you wanted some available for you, so. Absolutely, pass that down. Anyone?
Thank you.
So I will just start off if there are general or specific comments or questions on what I've shared most recently.
I was just wondering if anything changed from last time we had worked on this?
In the draft, nothing of any consequence. So all the sections and chapters are as had existed before. I think my most recent visit through this, again, had some, technical things, but nothing in terms of content specifically. But with that in mind, if there is content that you do have questions or concerns about in terms of the inclusion of it or the language of it, or possible impacts, positive or negative, of those things, I look forward to discussing any and all of that.
I haven't spent a lot of time looking at it. Going back to my original questions months ago, the house on Lakeview Avenue, can you put vinyl siding on it? Can I knock out the existing windows, or am I stuck putting
So Jeff, I'll direct you to the other set of materials where there are some FAQs, just examples, and that's not one of the examples that's in there. But the question as to whether someone can replace their siding replace their windows with vinyl windows, is basically a maybe. So it's dependent upon what the design standards are, and the design standards are not part of the ordinance. So the design standards, you can't create design standards without the ordinance authorizing their creation. And the ultimate design standards can, again, be whatever you want to a certain extent, but that will also be a subsequent.
who creates the design standards?
So that would be a preservation commission. So like a planning commission, there would be a group that is assembled that would work together in terms of creating those design standards. And the design standards would also have to, the structure itself would have to meet certain criteria to trigger design standards. And so right now, even if we pass the ordinance, that wouldn't trigger anything for the near future because we don't have design standards, because we don't have a preservation commission. So a lot of this, a lot of the fears of negative impacts of preservation ordinance, I mean, in terms of some of the other things that come after an ordinance, may or may not manifest because, first of all, you have to have the ordinance.
It's not the may not part, the word is made, it's the may part. ordinance is extraordinary, to me, in my opinion.
Right. Well, so just like applying for a variance, you can also apply for a variance in terms of the design standards. And so just the way you would make your case as to why a setback needs to be smaller, you would make your case as to why vinyl windows are necessary, as opposed to what the design standards may state.
And it does say that no person can do any of the following in a historic district, and one of them is materially alter the exterior of an existing structure.
So where are you, Mike? And so,
A 10,
10,
A 2, sorry,
sorry, 2A, sorry,
4, no, A 2, 10A,
10A2. 10A2. So that tells me there's some language that needs addressing, yes?
Well, it's just how much oversight is appropriate.
So materially doesn't actually talk about material. So materially is referring to really what remains intact of the original design of the structure.
So it would be removing a window?
That
as
would be,
opposed
yeah,
to-
yeah, so it doesn't necessarily talk about it's not actually referring to the type of window, but the window itself.
What if we wanted to take an outdoor porch and made it into a room and enclosed it? Materially changed.
It would have to go in front of the preservation board for review.
It's kind of thing, improve everything, but don't change the design, is basically the thought of it. We want to put it in a different place.
And I've seen this abuse, in my opinion, abuse in the past.
And what's the kind of
Overly
abuse?
too strict.
Yeah, right, yeah,
In my
yeah.
opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's one of the things I want to address. If there's things that you read in the ordinance that you feel fall into those concerns,
I just have a hard time saying, yeah, approve the ordinance, we'll figure out the rules.
no, exactly, that's why we're here. So again, for example, as Mike pointed out in 10A2, there's probably some room to improve that language so it's not misconstrued as to what materially means. So there's 90% of this that is taken from.
Architecturally.
Right, yeah. So there's 90% of this that is taken from the state template, and that language includes that clause there in terms of materially. And so in terms of language that can be more easily understood.
And I guess it's still, for me, it's how do they get the certificate of appropriateness? I mean, when do they have to do that, at what point? Like if they're repainting or changing the color or replacing windows, does that require them to have the certificate before? Or, what's the penalty if they just do it?
Oh,
And,
well,
I mean, there's that process, but people might not know what that process is, if they're a part of this, or
Right.
if this is voluntary or
right.
not voluntary to be part of the historic preservation ordinance.
Criteria for issuing a certificate of appropriateness, which is chapter 11.
Yeah.
So that is intended to kind of outline what the process would be. So in terms of what would trigger requiring a C of A,
Yes.
yeah, so
It
again,
doesn't have any adverse, will not have any adverse aesthetic, historical, architectural significance.
right, and that's
But
determined,
that means that the board will approve, right?
right,
So even if if it's not having any adverse effect, they still have to have that for the board to approve it. Is that?
so one of the examples I gave is that a homeowner wants to paint their house purple with pink polka dots.
Mhm.
And so they would go to the preservation board and tell them what their intention is to apply for a certificate of appropriateness. Is it appropriate for this property owner to paint their house purple with pink polka dots?
Well, let's say they want to paint it Jamestown red.
Uh-huh.
Historical Jamestown red. Then according to this, it will not have any effect, so then the board will approve it? Which
Yeah.
means, so they have to go to the board no matter what, to get that approved?
Yes,
That's
if their structure meets the criteria. So again, that criteria may be, if your house is more structure is going to trigger this.
Well, that's,
So is it a house that's a year old? Is it a house that's 50 years old? Is it a house that is only in a local or national historic district? Is it only structures that are already listed in the National Register? So again, those are criteria that would be determined, but we need an ordinance to authorize that step.
It is a difficult process. I've read about it in so many different ways, having to do with housing and buildings, and talked to different people about it. And so often, depending on the people who are making the decisions as to what the rules are gonna be and everything, in many cases, it's been put with different situations. If they don't have any real experience in it, that sometimes they can very well lead to a new rule that is going in the opposite direction.
Say more about that.
In the sense that you're making bad decisions about materials and things being used to try to retain something that's old. And it's just this, I mean, it's not just for this. It's for a lot of things that have been trying to be done by particularly governments. And governance has stuck its nose, not being kind, into a lot of things, and they try to guide it. But the reality is, for so many people, that what people who are not normally a part of that industry don't understand a lot of the reasoning that's gone in selecting things. So it's important for those situations to not so stiff, that or things that are less,
Yeah.
less good.
So I want to zoom out a little bit, rather than getting state. I want to zoom out from the granularity of things.
But the other thing is this though too. If you have people, groups that are opposite in some ways, they can still work together to find a solution that's good for both. Unless, particularly here in our country, unless the rules are too stiff and it doesn't allow any flexibility on either side.
Of course, yeah.
Those
This
are the
so-
concerns that you try to avoid.
So the ordinance is intended to provide a template of structure, but structure does not have to mean rigidity. And most of what I've heard is a fear of rigidity, and that is completely within our control. So the ordinance is not intrinsically rigid or loose.
But a board would be in charge of that at some point. And the board members would change, and that could be more
Right.
rigid or less, depending on who's on the board.
That's subjective.
Yeah.
But they're also beholden to the design standards that have been established
Yeah.
as well. So again, if there's someone on the preservation board that disagrees with an element in the design standards, that's not the role they play. The design standards are almost like the code for the
Yeah.
preservation board.
Yeah. I want you to finish your thought. You were gonna start with, not
Oh.
with well,
Yeah, so in terms of zooming out a little bit and taking more of a wide angle lens, I think the motivation for this otherwise has to be where we value preservation of our structures and how we prioritize that value and how do we demonstrate that. So if we say that we value our historic structures, and I'll just use the arcade building as an example, if we are taking the position that we value their preservation and their survival and new lives and new stewards for these, and again, that can be, I forget exactly the house number, but the big blue house on Lakewood that I know that apparently was very controversial to be painted blue. If we value those, do we do we wanna prioritize that? Because even if we value it, it doesn't mean that we're prioritizing it. And in either case, how do we wanna demonstrate and illustrate that we do value it, or prioritize it, or both?
Well, I guess there's a difference between aesthetic versus the building being condemned and, falling down. The arcade building fell into disrepair, not because of aesthetics, but because it wasn't being properly maintained.
Right.
And I don't know if this would have prevented that from happening.
Or will it, you just say opposite?
Yeah, or will it increase it
I'm
because
not
they
gonna
don't
fix
want
it,
it?
because I'm not gonna comply with all this.
And even if we have, they have to have the certificate of appropriateness also requires a public notice requirements, that's quite a bit,
Yeah.
sign.
Well, there's lots of things in terms of the land use policies that require public notices, and, so yes, ma'am.
Isn't there tax incentives that kind of tag along with this too?
That is only for the national designation, not local designation, so the local preservation ordinance would not pass along, those already exist.
Mhm.
So in terms of our existing historic districts, contributing structures in those districts, the property owners are entitled to apply for tax incentives for improvements to their property.
But they don't have to.
No, they don't, they
I-
can foot the entire bill if they want.
How much of this is also covered by current code? Current code, like building code violations, structural, like if the structure has bricks falling off it. Is there another means to, I guess, enforce the?
There's a chapter on demolition by neglect.
No, I just wonder if there's a current means in place.
No.
Through code to enforce the, so if a building the roof is leaking and like an arcade building and it's falling down, there's no avenue for the city to step in and say, hey, we need to fix this before the building falls.
The county owns the building.
Well, just any building, it doesn't have to be an arcade building. but-
Okay.
It's what's being talked about, and we're looking at a lot of historic buildings. When it comes around the community though, there's a lot of buildings that might not be historic that we have that really need some good guidance as to how to make them a better looking building.
Right, but I wanna go back to the original question, which is, do we value the preservation of old structures?
I'm gonna turn it around on you. I live in Lakeview Avenue, in the middle of a bunch of old historic buildings, which I would love for somebody to come in, love for Tom to go by and fix it up, okay? I don't think this is gonna help that. I think it's gonna deter people from doing that, my opinion.
There's a lot of hoops we're putting.
I don't think you're gonna buy that house when you're like, oh, it's great, I go through all this.
Are there any
Okay, but then,
benefits?
why not answer my question then? Why turn it around? Why not just answer the question?
I think anyone though who purchases, who's attracted to those buildings, those structures, wants to maintain. I don't think if it's an issue of want or desire to do it.
This isn't,
Um,
this is bigger than the maintenance of one structure.
People buy a house like that, they wanna tear something up because it's gonna make it easier and it's gonna work better for the cash flow from the tenants.
This ordinance is not for or against any individual property owner. This ordinance is for the advancement of the community's properties.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Are there, besides the obvious ones of preserving historic structures, which are, I think, great to have in any community, are there any benefits to the city, such as opportunities to get grants and things like that? What are we missing out on because
So,
we don't have an LPO?
So one of the things we're missing out on not having an LPO is that we are not able to be a certified local government. And a certified local government gives us a credential to apply for funding opportunities.
Why for that?
Funding opportunities.
Okay.
You mean, would that include things like helping people with the changes to historic structures that we're talking about? Like homeowner programs?
Yeah,
and things like that?
I'm not well versed in exactly what those platforms are. But again, it's the food chain of certain things, and the local preservation ordinance is really the first ingredient to any recipe. And so the LPO allows, because again, even to become a certified local government, you still have to apply. And so it's not as though once you have an LPO, you're also a CLG. The LPO just gives you the eligibility to become a CLG, and then if you are accepted, if your application is accepted to be a CLG, then it again opens more doors for funding and support and resources.
I think it'd be great for us to learn more about that
Great.
in
Yeah.
general. And
Shows the carrot,
yeah,
right?
and the second thing is, we're talking about these design guidelines, right? And those are gonna be created by the board, which doesn't exist and is not gonna exist at the time that this is adopted, if it's adopted, right?
Right.
But a lot of this is in the hands of city council, right?
Yes,
Because
yes.
a historic district doesn't exist as that term is defined in this LPO unless city council says it's a historic district, right?
Correct.
So it's not that Lakeview's a historic district because federally it's a historic district.
Correct.
Nothing's a historic district until city council says it's a historic district.
Correct.
And we could adopt this as a city, and city council could say, well, we don't think that any place should be a historic district, we don't wanna burden people in this way. Or maybe we want this block to be historic, that includes the Jackson Center, or whatever, nothing else. And so a lot of this comes down to city council, which I think is very appropriate, right? Because those are the democratically elected representatives from the city, and they're accountable to the people in their district, or in the citywide for the at-large. So that makes a lot of sense to me. But I have some of the same concerns that have already been expressed as far as we already have a lack of investment in historic structures in the city. If you look around, there's beautiful houses that are in horrible condition, right? And does this help that any, or does it make it worse? And I think maybe we will find out that it will make it better, but it's tough to see right now when you're just thinking about the idea that any change, like replacing putting a vinyl window in, is gonna have to go in front of a board, and they may or may not approve it based on design guidelines that don't even exist yet, right? So, anyway, those are my thoughts.
It certainly is worth more discussion, no doubt about it. My concern is, and how it has been, it's tough enough now to get contractors and subcontractors to do this type of work. Are we adding more hoops for those type of folks? Or maybe not, I don't know. I mean, ideally, I've seen this workforce development and folks that can do carpentry or electrical or plumbing. It's getting tougher and tougher to find those folks to do that kind of work.
It used to be an art.
And to afford it.
And to carpenter was an art.
You know, when I was in school, it was taught as a craft.
Right.
You know, and
Well-
masonry and all of that, so.
And so I'll circle back to what John was asking about in terms of the CLG status. So again, in terms of affordability, the LPO gives us the opportunity to apply as a certified local government. If accepted as a certified local government, that also opens up opportunities for funding in terms of things that could lean towards cost prohibitive for property owners.
I tend to agree with the essence of what you're saying. And trying to move forward, because as I look at the city, and I've been involved in real estate and that kind of thing, and looking at it for a long time, doesn't make me an expert in anything, just been there. But I watched the city, and I started thinking a lot about it when I first was working in architecture years ago, and then running the Brooklyn Square project. Involved with engineers, architects, and everything for all kinds of things. And design, especially as the architects were working, that was really important, but a lot of other people were very willing to, skip that. And everything in the architect, I can remember a couple of cases not arguing, but trying to sell the idea that this particular design, and it would work. And I tend to believe that what I remember of those discussions is that that's true. But it's a common thing that happens. You got somebody that is very knowledgeable about a given subject. You got somebody else that's knowledgeable, but also but about a different subject. And trying to get those kinds of people to come together is never gonna be easy. And you've got to, in doing this, I've often felt, we talked a little bit about it 50 years ago too, is how do we do it so you can get people, in essence, to sit down really and talk with each other and not, you know, be in there demanding one thing or another, and find the good solutions with different, diverse people that don't all think the same. If we could accomplish that part, which is the human side, in getting this going, I think we could cause the city to look a lot better in all its neighborhoods, even with some of its more recent housing than the real old stuff. Because I watched this city go from really looking good in the 50s, you might say. There's a lot of neighborhoods I go through and I see what it looks like now, and it's really deteriorated terribly.
Yes, Casey.
So sitting back here, I was
There's no
reading,
easy solution.
I was reading about the local preservation ordinance in Philadelphia and the impact it had on their small apartment buildings. And I think it's important for us to realize while we're sitting here that we're literally writing the rules, and like, that's not a concrete document, right? It's all in draft. For their funding source that they were able to use for some of the renovations, it just had to maintain 75% of historic value. So if the vinyl windows, if that's really what you want and what you need, that fits into the 25% that you have of wiggle room, that's something that maybe we could consider having just a set amount. The whole thing doesn't have to remain a historic material for material renovation to be able to maintain funding opportunities. And there was one other thing that I found significant, and now I can't remember what it was.
Well, we were looking for that. I will also redirect you to some of the, so Binghamton, I included some things about Binghamton. I believe it's on your last or back page. So I encourage you to explore what other, I guess, similar communities have been doing in terms of their LPOs. Sorry, did you find it?
Yes. So just because on a federal level, like if something's not registered at a federal level, you can still have a tax incentive, but it's gonna fall down on a local level. So if that's the incentive that like will make you keep your windows or your siding and, you know, no, we just have to write that in because we are the keepers of the document at the end of the day. So I mean, jot those down. I would just read it over, jot down your little notes and suggestions, and then give it back to us, so then we can go revisit it and consider all those suggestions.
In case it's not obvious, I see the LPO as an opportunity for the city, to the extent that there are more hoops for people to jump through, more oversight, these sorts of things. Given what I've experienced in my role with the challenges for accountability that exist for property owners, I think there is more oversight that is needed. I think there are more hoops that people need to jump through. And again, I'm saying this at a community level, not an individual property owner level. So this is, again, I'm gonna repeat it, this is not about how this affects one individual property owner for better or for worse. This is an opportunity for the entire community to have a guide as to how to move forward from how we view our building stock and how we demonstrate our feelings about it.
I agree, but I believe, and one thing with historic buildings, but there's a heck of a lot of other buildings around the city. The process of getting older, so you're looking back and you can remember what things were maybe and stuff.
Well, but also remember,
Other
historic
times,
is how we define it. From a federal level, it's triggered by 50 years. So we are now entering a period where properties from the 1970s are eligible for national historic status. And so in terms of navigating what the 1970s brought us, in terms of building, design, and construction, that's a different thing as well. So historic is not is not something that lives in a vacuum. And so it's going to be relative to the period in which it was built, the design trends of that period. So it's a very fluid thing in terms of how we talk about what is historic and what's not.
My house is 107 years old now.
I'm coming up on you, mine's 102.
You mentioned the term guide, and I think a guide would be much more.
Wow.
My rental property is 127.
Than an
1896.
But that's what all ordinances are.
Our guidance.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there's still, when people see penalties and stuff.
We can take the penalties out. This can say whatever we want it to say.
But I like the term guide.
Yeah, our codes are guides, our ordinance are guides, and the enforcement of them may not feel like they're guiding the city, but they are our guide.
Who creates I guess we said that the board creates the design guidelines, right? But do they have to be approved by city council as well, or how would that work? Or is that, maybe that's a work in progress as far as how that would look?
Yeah, I don't know what the typical process, I'm gonna say probably yes. I'm gonna err on the side that yes, city council has to approve the preservation board's design standards. But that's a good question.
What if we can't find a historian or a historical, conservationist or original estate professional to serve on the board?
Excellent question.
What do we?
Yeah, so we'll have to put language in there that allows for a contingency. That language is there primarily from the template of the state's
Yeah.
outline, but I think there's probably lots of communities that face barriers with that. And so, I think it's useful to have language that, provides for that.
If I were to buy Jeff's house, would you let me know? If it's a historic, in a historic site, like, how would I know that? What if I didn't know? Is that part of something that real
It would
estate?
have to be a historic overlay. Zoning.
I mean, I'm just worried someone doesn't know.
It's gotta be a mess.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, they're like, yeah, I wanna paint, or I wanna do this, and they're like, oh, no, we have to do it to comply with this, yeah.
Yeah, there aren't
I
signs
didn't
on the
know
whole
when I
road.
bought it,
I could be wrong, because I haven't looked at one today, but I think there's something called a real property condition disclosure. Anytime you sell a house, you gotta fill
Is
it
it
out.
one of those
This one.
papers or
So I
something?
think it's one of the yes, no check boxes.
Mm-hmm.
Is this located in a historic district?
Yeah.
Is there lead in the home? Is there asbestos? And everybody just checks unknown for everything.
That's where it's signing lots of papers.
Jump through hoops for that.
Yeah, so
I think
maybe
it's
one of those
important
guys.
what we're talking about too, though, in working with the community. Use as many outlets as you can find that spreads the story out through the community. A lot of people will take actions on their houses themselves and feel better about even spending money on their houses if they feel there's something going on that makes the community itself better because of that collective work. But I think you've got to involve the community. The communities have basically been shut out by governments big and small for a
Well,
long
that was
time.
definitely my agenda with the architectural tours
Yeah.
this summer. And it's been challenging to engage the community really on any issue. And certainly for those that attended, the architectural tours, you can see, the challenges were to really try to reach people and, stimulate their interest to participate. And this area is included. So that's definitely an area of challenge overall that I am tasked with in terms of reaching the community about any issue, and this is just
Welcome
one
to
of many.
Seals.
Say again?
Welcome to Snow.
I know, right? Yeah. But that's certainly the agenda, so definitely a lot of the motivation for the architectural tours was to get people to know their neighborhoods better, know their neighbor's neighborhood better,
Well, I saw a few things on that walk that I didn't even ever see before.
Right, and that's exactly why we did
And
that,
I've only driven by them maybe 1,000 times.
right, right.
The old photographs are fantastic, I like that. Not to say that these properties, some of them aren't being put to great use now, right? Instead of
That's
having a.
parking lots.
Oh, the park, I thought this one was the ice arena, not the.
Oh, that has, yeah,
Foreground.
so I think that's the only one that has an actual structure
Oh, is
in
it,
the
okay.
space. I
So
think
that's being
all
put
the
to
others
good
have been
use.
replaced by parking
But
lots.
some of those structures are
Yeah,
quite amazing.
right,
When I was a
yeah,
kid, the ice rinks were on the tennis courts.
yeah.
When I was a little bit older,
So
the
on,
ice rinks were on different plots all around the community.
so on the note of parking lots, currently, if someone in the Lakeview Avenue Historic District wanted to buy a house, demolish it, and, put up a parking lot, they can do that. I guess I would be hard pressed to think that there's anyone that lives in the neighborhood that thinks that a parking lot is necessary or useful in their neighborhood.
Do you need a permit to tear down the house?
If I wanted to tear down buy my neighbor's property, tear down the house and put up a garage on my property,
You can do that right now, yeah.
It's one of the things that's a,
if they decide that's an acceptable thing. Now I could do it.
Now you
Now
can do
you
it.
can.
But I would be
But if
hard
that
pressed to
commission
think that
doesn't
your
think it's
neighbors
a
would
good
be
idea.
pleased with you putting a garage up on,
I'm just saying, I'm throwing it out.
Right.
one of the things though that we've done in this community, if you go back historically, we created a lot of lot sizes 50-foot wide. And over time, with first buying one car into these old neighborhoods and having it, and then buying another car, so we're up to 2 cars. A lot of our older neighborhoods are drowning in the sense of cars that they can't, there's no place to put them.
This house.
there's street parking, isn't there?
Yeah, but the thing is, you need a wider lot to be able, given the size of the old houses, the width of them, as they go across, you gotta have enough land left so that you can put a driveway up.
But they can park on the street.
But you don't want them parking on the
Four
street.
cars, you got 2 kids, he's got 2 kids, 3
There's
kids.
some places don't have
Maybe
driveways.
5 cars on that.
Yeah,
Right.
sometimes when you got a house that's crowded and you got a
Well,
house
a
that's going
driveway,
on,
but
take it out.
I'm gonna push back that a driveway is not the same thing as a parking lot.
In a lot of ways, being around neighborhoods for 8 years, there's cases where I've seen driveways going up through that are really turning a negative on the house next door. And it's because we built things on 50-foot lots and even less in some of the older neighborhoods. Then we went up to about 70-foot lots, and it got better, but it was 1-car garage.
Then came the shared driveway.
Yep, and there's been all kinds of things that have been done.
Well, I
So
didn't mean to
all I'm
open a
gonna
can of
say
worms about
is that-
driveways, I was
yeah.
talking about parking lots.
I would assume that you can't tear these buildings down,
Oh, yeah, you
they're
can.
listed on the National Register
No,
of
national,
Historic
the
Places.
national designation provides no protection, you need an
Really?
LPO for protection.
Yeah, so anyway, I guess I sort of made this point earlier, but I see there being kind of like a middle ground to all this where, I think we talked about this the first time around, where we prohibit demolition as kind of like a first step. Like,
Yeah.
hey, these are all the structures that are important enough that we shouldn't tear them down completely, right? And then maybe build upon that. Yeah, right. I mean, you got to be careful about which structures to include and not include, but I think as a bare minimum, you would probably include all these structures. I
Right.
think, right?
Well, and again, I will circle back that the ordinance is not, it's not for or against any one property owner, it's also not for or against any one property. And so the ordinance is really addressing this as a community-wide thing, not about just a single structure or a single property owner.
But if city council wanted to choose specific structures, I assume it could, right? Then the district would just.
Right now they can, yeah, right now.
I'm saying if we adopted the LPO, city council could say, well, the historic districts are just the property of these
Oh,
6
yeah.
or 7 buildings,
Oh.
and nothing else, if they
Well,
wanted to.
I guess it would depend who the petitioner is in presenting an application to council for a historic district.
Right,
Okay.
So, and council would say, no, we don't want these 6 properties in the historic district, we just want these 5.
yeah,
So, yeah,
okay.
stuff like that, yeah. So in the interest of time, I don't think we need to, I mean, I'll talk all day if you want, but,
If we could have some more information on the benefits that you talked about.
Yeah,
It
for
seems
sure,
a
for
little
local
bit
governments,
unclear, but it
absolutely.
seems like there
Yeah.
are some benefits out there to having this in place, that would be great
Absolutely.
for us all to consider.
We did a video, WebEx or whatever it was, who was that with? And they talked specifically about, oh, it was a year and a half ago?
that was me.
You were there, I don't know who it was.
Preservation Buffalo Niagara does, periodic webinars on applying for, tax incentives.
Was that Christine? Or
Christiana, yeah,
is that what it was?
if that's what you're thinking of. So Preservation Buffalo Niagara, for those that live in a historic district, if you're looking to do improvements or repairs and interested in applying for state tax credits, Preservation Buffalo Niagara can walk you through how to apply for those otherwise. Thank you, sir.
We've got a lot of old neighborhoods in this city that could use those tax credits.
Absolutely.
They may not be historically,
Well, they have to
there's
be
history,
federally
but they may not
recognized
be
at the moment.
historically wanted to preserve.
Yeah. All right, thank you.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
So,
3.